Do you want to read the ad, or would you like me to? You want to read it, or you want me to?
I'll let you read it.
Okay.
I'd like it.
Is Doug not coming tonight? Or-
Doug will not be here,
Oh,
Will Emilio be here?
as far as.
oh, he'll be, yeah.
He has a hard time getting here at this time.
Town of Walpole, Commonwealth of Massachusetts, notice of intent. In accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Walpole Wetlands Protection Bylaw, notice is hereby given of the intent of Thomas Powers to perform work associated with the redevelopment of the site for proposed mixed-use building and appurtenances at 132, 136, 140 Washington Street, map 20, lot 32 in Walpole, Mass. The notice of intent application and plans are on file with the Conservation Office. The public hearing on the above matter was held December 14th, 2022, beginning at 8, and now it's continued. All interested persons are requested to be present. John Wiley, Chairman, Walpole Conservation Commission.
Representing the applicant?
Dan Merrickin with Legacy Engineering. So, Landis and I have been working on the riverfront area question for the clock tower. I think as you will recall, a portion of the project is in the outer riparian zone. It's viewed as a redevelopment under the regulations because there's an existing structure there, so it would be an expansion of existing structure. When you go through the different criteria for redevelopment, which is on the third page, they'll allow you to basically modify any existing degraded areas, and then up to 10% if your degraded areas don't equal 10%. Anything beyond that, you would have to propose on-site or off-site mitigation. So it's not really clear how this project was previously characterized. It was two much larger projects were previously approved. But when Landis and I go out and look at the site today, areas that were formerly occupied by the Bird Hall building structure now have grass on them. The railroad slope has trees in it, so Landis is of the view that those areas shouldn't be considered degraded. So if we go through that analysis, what we end up with is we can disturb about 3,000 square feet. That would be 10%, it's 3,100 square feet. And in order to fit the parking and the driveways and all of that, we're looking to disturb 10,048 square feet. So one proposal is, and if you look at, I have some pictures for you, but if you look at Exhibit A, which is the first of the 11 by 17 plans, there is an area on the backside of the old railroad bed. And the railroad bed is this, depressed with vertical walls on either side. Between there and Hollingsworth and Bowes is an area about 970 square feet that is basically gravel right now. So we're proposing that as on-site mitigation. And I have a planting plan in Exhibit B. Landis hasn't really had a chance to look at that. That can obviously be changed if we need to. So that leaves us with about 6,000 square feet, and we're trying to identify an off-site mitigation project. Landis and I went out and we looked at the land that you own on Bird Pond. If you look at Exhibit C on the far side, and it's pretty horrendously overgrown with invasive species. So one thought was that maybe the applicant could undertake a removal project over there in an area, and we did identify an area that Landis and I looked at as probably the worst area, I think. If you look at Exhibit D, even in the aerial photograph, you could see it's just a mat of bittersweets.
That's nasty.
It's really nasty. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah,
it's just completely, totally overgrown with bittersweet, so.
which one of those?
I know Landis has some questions about this. My reading of the reg is that, the commission has pretty broad discretion to conclude to determine whether an off-site mitigation project, is basically offsets the additional 6,000 square feet of redevelopment that we're looking for. And again, I think it's important to recognize that this is not virgin land on the clock tower site. It's all previously disturbed, it's filled, there's concrete rubble there, it's fenced in. It is vegetated, but it's by no means a natural kind of situation. So I know that Landis, I just got this to you guys today. I know that Landis has questions about it. I think I would meet with her
Yeah.
to go over that, but we also wanted to show you this and get your thoughts on it.
I actually have a couple things to add, that maybe there was a misunderstanding when we were out there on the site. I was not making a determination on which areas were considered redevelopment and what areas were not redevelopment. That's for the commission to decide.
Oh, understood.
The area where there's mature trees, I was thinking is not redevelopment.
Well, it's a question, the project is redevelopment under the regs, so it's a question of what
Well, I think
areas are
that if I can-
degraded.
Right, so that's why, what I was telling you was to put a plan together which you showed the areas that you were considering were redevelopment, degraded areas, and which weren't.
Right,
So
so,
under 10.585, redevelopment means replacement, rehabilitation, or expansive of existing structures, improvements of existing roads. A previously developed riverfront area contains areas degraded prior to August 7th, 1996, which I think the area at some point had been degraded by impervious surface from existing structures or pavement, absence of topsoil, junkyards, or abandoned dumping grounds. Work to redevelop previously developed riverfront areas shall conform to the following criteria. Now, we've gone over this, the commission has gone over this before, of what is currently degraded on a site. So
Well, we have an
there are areas where there's topsoil. All the areas not absence of topsoil.
right, so we have degraded, the trigger for whether it's considered a redevelopment or not is, are there degraded areas on the site? And there are. So those would be areas 1 and 5 on my Exhibit A.
Okay.
Right, so that makes this a redevelopment project. And the standards don't say that you can't disturb more than was degraded. They actually say that if your degraded area is only 5% of the lot area, you can disturb up to 10. So you can disturb more. And they go on to say also that,
So I guess what would help me is if you had something that showed areas that you're considering degraded and areas that you're considering not degraded.
yep, that's Exhibit A. So that would be the beige area along Washington Street is degraded. That has the building and all the patios. And then the blue area is where we have a roofed-over old railroad tunnel. So that's degraded. And then the yellow area along Hollingsworth and Vosges is that area that's basically just gravel. So that, in my view, is degraded. So those three areas are degraded areas on the site presently.
Okay, and that equals to how much square footage of degraded riverfront area?
The total area of degraded on the property is... about 4,700 square feet.
Okay. And that's in your description. Sorry, I just saw this afternoon as
No, no,
well, so.
Absolutely, I just got this to you today, yep. So, when you have a redevelopment project, there is provision that you can do things that don't fall within 1058, 5A through, actually, it's C through E, C, D, and E. C is you can't be any closer to the river than the existing conditions, which we're not, so we're okay there. D is, your work should be away towards the outer edge of the riverfront area, which we are, so I think we're okay there. It's E, that is the issue that needs either on-site or off-site mitigation, or a combination of the two. It is the area of the work shall not exceed the amount of degraded area, provided that the proposed work may alter up to 10% if the degraded area is less than 10%, except that in accordance with 310 CMI 1058.5 F or G. F is on-site mitigation, which is on-site restoration, actually. So you could take an existing on-site area that's degraded and restore it, which is what we're proposing to do with Area 7, that strip along Hollingsworth and Bose's driveway. That's above the wall, between the wall and their driveway. It's the closest part to the river. And then G is a little more broad. It is mitigation. It's not necessarily restoration. It can be on-site mitigation, or it can be off-site mitigation. And it includes a host of different things that you could do that would allow the commission to basically reach a conclusion that, the project as a net will have no significant adverse impacts on the interests of the act for the riverfront area. So that's what we're trying to get to. So we have a combination of proposed on-site restoration. We're also proposing, there are invasives in the old rail tunnel area. We're proposing to remove those, and that could be a permanent condition,
Remove what?
invasive species
Yeah, okay.
in that old rail tunnel. There's a sewer line through there, but, there's bittersweet in there, and there's Japanese knotweed in there, so it could be a continuing condition that, that be permanently be maintained free of invasive species. You can consider that as part of mitigation, on-site or off-site. And then we were looking at possibly doing some work on the town's land to remove some invasive species along Bird Pond as an off-site mitigation measure. And at the end of the day, you just have to reach a conclusion that in the aggregate, you think it's a good project, basically. And I have done something like this before. We had a riverfront area, and the applicant actually funded the removal of, or chemical treatment for aquatic invasive species in a nearby water body, and that was deemed to be an acceptable option. I don't know if you guys have other projects, that you'd be interested in the applicant either donating funds to or doing some work for that would improve riverfront areas elsewhere in town.
Right, so, because there's lots of different numbers in this project, if you could put together, I think a chart would help.
Sure.
me, and I know it probably would help the commission, of the degraded areas, then the riverfront area, and then what you use can be no more than 10% of the riverfront area, so that number, so we can have all those kind of figures in one place that are
Absolutely.
in the regulations.
Yep.
And then again, so when this came up, that that one of the options would be for mitigation, and in another project that we worked on at Burns Ave, he did mitigation also. You can do mitigation on-site, which they're gonna propose some mitigation on-site, or you can go off-site. So if you're on-site, it's a 1-to-1, if it's off-site, it's a 2-to-1. And, I've been down the trail on the land that Concom owns along Bird Pond, the Ponset River, and it's just loaded. It's just awful. It's being choked all the way from the entrance down to where there's more of a tree canopy, actually seems to where it stops. So I brought him down there, and we walked around a little bit, and I thought about doing some mitigation there. And then I looked at what Dan sent in the package that you have here, and it's such a small area of a huge area of invasive species. So one of my questions to Russ and Dan was, is this going to, taking a small area and attempting to get the bittersweet out, is that really gonna do anything? Or 3 years later, it's just gonna
Overgrown.
overgrow again? And when I saw here's an aerial in there which kind of shows the area, it just seemed really small compared to the enormity of the project, of the whole area. So, and I'm sure, Al, you probably know more than I do on this subject. I was reading a little bit on the Charles River watershed site and how they deal with it, and it's a big problem. It takes a lot of effort, and it's pretty much a constant project of removing invasives to keep them out.
It's not a one and done kind
It's
of.
not a one and done. So, if people have other ideas, the commission could approach it differently. I think we're up for options.
Okay. I look at this plan that is before us, it's sheet 1 of 1, and then the next page is sheet 1 of 1. I don't know why there's 2 sheets labeled the same. Well, they're all numbered sheet 1 of 1. Okay, so that doesn't give me enough information as to spur me to think that this development is going to be something that makes a good impression in the most important location here in town, okay?
So,
The-
so there are plans, engineering
Oh,
plans for the
okay.
particular project which we had the last
Yeah,
time.
we came to you
Yeah.
Okay,
a month ago and went over all the plans.
These are only addressing the mitigation issue.
Yeah, if you remember, what we're proposing to do is to build a structure around the clock tower and incorporate the clock tower into the new structure. And it would be a 3-story structure, with the first floor being commercial and the second 2 floors being residential units. So it's a mixed-use building. So the area, predominantly the area that involves work in the riverfront is the front part of the building along Washington Street. Part of the clock tower's in there. And then the parking area in the back. So we have detailed plans for all that, and honestly, we've been through the planning board, we've been through the zoning board, they're waiting to vote. Really, the last thing to deal with is this question of riverfront area and appropriate on-site, off-site mitigation and restoration. But the town engineer has basically blessed those plans, and the applicant, I think, is proposing to build a nice structure there that I could provide you the architecturals if you want. But I think it'll be good to kind of make that building back into something real, instead of a tower standing in the middle of an empty lot.
yeah, well, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking, in my mind, to see the clock tower restored and something worthwhile around it, not just something stuck in there to make money for the developer. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at. And is there going to be an outside sitting area? Is
Well, the
this going to
patio,
be?
we're gonna maintain the patio along Washington Street.
Okay,
So there's a patio right now, there's a brick patio along Washington Street.
yeah,
When they rebuild it, we're gonna create, we're gonna rebuild it, but there's gonna be a brick patio between the building and Washington Street, just like
okay.
is there now. And the clock tower is going to be saved and preserved and restored, and it's gonna be incorporated into the new structure.
Okay, so that's, what I'm looking at is, what is the goal down the road? If we can get past this business of the work in the riverfront and the invasive species and all that, what is the final goal, and what is the benefits to the river in that area? Okay, so now, years ago, when we first started with what was known as the tripartite agreement, which gave us the trail along one side of Bird Pond and coming out to Washington Street. And at that time, I had a chance to walk through this tunnel. And after a while, I found out that there was a sewer line through the tunnel now. And I'd like to see ultimately a trail that goes along the river and continues to Norwood. Okay, so as part of this restoration and cleanup and all, I'd like to see that the tunnel is still available to walk through if somebody so choose to develop a trail there. And there's not an obstacle to doing that. Okay, so those are things that are in my mind when somebody finishes the cleanup in this site. I used to have breakfast in the breakfast shop there a few times, and they moved out of the area, so it doesn't happen anymore. So what kind of a place, what is this building itself? It has something on the ground floor and something on the upper floors. What's the dream there?
Well, the first floor will be commercial, multi-tenant commercial. We don't know, obviously, until we build it, who's gonna be there, but it will be, 1, 2, maybe 3 little small businesses. And then the upper 2 floors will be 6 two-bedroom residential units.
Yeah, okay. See, I know that originally there was a meeting hall up above, and I went to meetings there as a teenager. But, so I know that something has to happen here, and I look forward to seeing something happen here because it's a blight on the town as you come from Norwood and you see this burned out area. Okay, so I'm looking forward to seeing something constructive happen, and I don't disagree with doing some invasive species work on the other side of Washington Street. That doesn't bother me as long as the area here on this parcel is cleaned up and no more invasive species in that area, and some kind of a maintenance plan to make sure that it doesn't come back. I don't like the idea of just going and cut invasive species, and that just invigorates them some more. So that's what I'm looking at. I want to make sure that if we clean up invasive species somewhere, that it's not a one cut and done and go away and leave it grow back again, because I know that these species, you cut it, and instead of one plant, now you have 2 or 3. And we have to do more than just cut it off and hope it's going to be gone. So that's what I'm looking at, and that's what my long-term vision is for this parcel and something related to it. Okay, so I'm not against doing invasive species work across the street. So you just have to show me that it's something that can work, and that we can go forward from there. Okay, Dean?
Landis, is there like another parcel that would be more suitable? Maybe have larger impact? We own a lot of land in Walpole.
It has to be riverfront area.
Yep. It's very riverfront.
I'm saying, back here, right?
Off the top of my head at this minute, I can't think of anything specific. I mean, what I would like to know is that the plan that you're submitting is gonna, you know, I think we talked about you know, at least a 3-year plan of going in there and monitoring it and doing.
Yeah, I would envision a 2 or 3 year plan, you know. On our side, we can, you know, commit to forever,
Yep.
no invasive species on our side. You know, the owners of the property, you know, could do that. But yeah, work we do on town land, I was thinking a 2 or 3 year. You go in and do removal, and then you'd follow up for the next 2 years, 3 years, and,
Right, yeah, I think you'd
Maintain
have to
it.
at least do 3 years, so.
yeah.
All right. Thank you, no more questions.
Similarly, why was this specific proposed restoration area selected?
Because it's the worst.
Because it's the worst.
Because I pointed them in that direction.
Yeah.
It's definitely an area that really needs something. And maybe, I don't know if, maybe talk to someone with maybe a little more specialization in invasive species removal. I don't
Okay.
know. Maybe taking, if you did a wider area but took it out of the trees. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, I'm liking where you're going.
It's
Well,
hard.
there's
So much
also
out there.
something to be said for taking an area that's not necessarily so overgrown and targeting that, because that is something that's easier to maintain in the long run. You know, the area that you brought us to is really like it's a jungle. It's really, really bad.
So someone who does that for a living might be able to give you direction if it's worth it or not.
All right, let me see what I can find.
I like a little, I think the commission should have a little more input from someone who actually does a lot of that work.
Yeah, I'd like to see a proposal that deals with that. We wouldn't want to just sign off and say, well, somebody's going to go in there and do something. Let's find out what they can do. Emilio?
Yeah, I think we all agree that it's a worthwhile project. It's just a matter of getting, crossing the Ts and dotting the Is and getting where we want to be. So I agree with Landis and Al about trying to, fine tune the mitigation of the invasive. So, so whatever you can do to try to
Okay.
get to that point and work with Landis on that. But I think it's a good project, and I think it's better than the last 30 years of barren kind of.
It would be really nice to
I
put
think,
that site back in order.
I think we all agree that we want to see that. So it's just a matter of getting these things fine tuned. But
Okay.
yeah, that's all I've got.
Okay.
Okay, so 4 things. Firstly, I too have emotional and even historic, love of history connections with this area. And I don't know if you remember, Al, but when we did see an architectural rendering. I can't remember why we were allowed to see it, because it's not our jurisdiction, right? I mean, they could.
I
What-
could submit that if
No,
you
no,
want.
but it's not even our jurisdiction, but I did see it, and I was like, oh, wow, great. So, I mean, I felt reassured, and I don't think it's our jurisdiction to, like, say whether it should be apartments or retail or whatever, but I just remember feeling, okay, good, check that box off. Secondly, a couple months ago, I walked through the tunnel, and I agree with you, Al, on a wish list would be, gosh, if only it were connected up. It's such a cool tunnel. But I think this is private property. I mean, I think someone else owns this. In fact, I know they do. It's the Hogan Family Realty Trust.
On the other side?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't just say, okay, we're going to, I mean, yes, I mean, ultimately, wouldn't it be lovely if we had a trail going all the way? But from some rail trails going through Medfield into Dover, that they don't get into Dover for all sorts of reasons.
So
Yeah.
underneath the
Yeah.
road, I believe the town owns the area underneath the road, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there is a small section between coming out of the tunnel before you pick up the path that is already there.
A small section that we own?
No,
Oh.
that would need to be we would need to talk to the
That's what,
property owner.
that's what I mean. So to me, it's sort of like, that wouldn't be like, okay, that's, I love the idea, but that doesn't like make or break any part of the project from me, just because I like the idea. I know how hard it is to get those kind of, permissions across property. So just focusing on our jurisdiction, I agree with Landis that since we are dealing with a riverfront and degraded riverfront, that we want to do it right, because we want to make sure we're doing it right. And so, a nice table showing that would be great. And I do like, I've walked in that horrible Bittersweet area. And I know Gary Riggett has worked really hard on it, but it just gets ahead of him. I'm thinking that whatever 3-year plan you come up with, yes, it should have an expert on Bittersweet involved. It shouldn't be just someone with clippers. And I'm thinking Gary Riggett, who's our trails guy, his trails committee, could just be sort of looped in, because
Yeah,
he does a lot of, he's probably watching tonight. I mean, it's
I
like,
was just gonna add, I'd already talked to Dan about, we
Yeah.
need to loop in Gary
Okay,
Riggett, because
good.
he's trails person, and, also Napontet, because they own
Yeah.
kind of the public land.
because once it's all cleared out, it's possible Gary could kind of make a little bit of foray in there. It's hard for him with his equipment to, just do a complete removal,
And
but.
I I don't know if everyone has looked all the way through that packet, but
Yeah.
that little yellow area in the corner
Yeah.
is the area
Yeah,
that, nope,
no, what?
that's
Oh,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
area that
Yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah.
proposing to restore.
Yeah. No, I know, but, okay, but you're right, as you get further along, it's not as bad on this trail. That's the absolute worst part, is you're trying to enter it from that Bird Drive or whatever it
From the
is.
school, yeah. Once you cross over
Yeah.
from the school property, the school property's not too bad. Once you cross over from the school property into your land, then it gets really
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah,
It's really bad. All right, well, I will certainly see if I can get in touch with a contractor who specializes in this kind of work. I know that my botanist mentioned somebody, so Russ mentioned somebody, so I think we can track that information down. And
I think that would be helpful to get their opinion, is this just gonna be, just, in 3 years, it's just gonna go back, and it's not gonna, it won't even look like anything was done, or if there's some other way to approach it, that we get the best bang for the project.
It looks to me like we're going to continue this for more information. How far out do we want to schedule it?
I mean, I would say, when is your next meeting? It's not gonna take me too long to get a hold of somebody and get them out there to look at that.
The 22nd.
Let me just check my calendar here. Yeah, if we could do that.
Okay, so just so you know, on the 22nd, we have two somewhat large projects. We have something at 7, and we have something at 7.
All right, I mean, if we could put it on there, then if I'm not ready, I'll just ask for a continuance. I know the zoning board in particular is eager to move on this thing, so I just want to keep it moving in the right direction. So,
So the 7, there's nothing else on there, right? So 7:30.
okay.
Okay, I'll accept a motion to
I'll move that.
continue.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So the public hearing for 132, 136, 140 Washington Street, known as the Clock Tower, is going to be continued to February 22nd at 7:30.
Are we gonna do Peach Street next? Yeah.
And I can share. It's a nice aerial, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this is for the enforcement issues, so there's no advertisement to.
This is a quick update. I wasn't here at your last meeting, but the applicant told me that you wanted larger sized trees, so I just revised this plan. It's what you saw last time to specify minimum 2.5-inch caliper trees. The applicant has spoken to both property owners next to them, the Wohler property and the Giampetro property. I met with one of them as well. They all have indicated that this seems okay to them, but they haven't given it to us in writing yet. So we're just waiting for them to, they tell us they're gonna send us an email. And if this is okay with the commission, then as soon as we get a blessing from the two property owners, we can put this in motion.
Could I add something just very quickly? The conversation that we had last month actually was an agreement discussed amongst the commissioners that it was a 4 to 6 inch caliper tree.
Okay, I didn't catch that. All right, I'll submit a revision on that. Would more smaller trees be better? I know that larger, bigger trees, you know, they're harder to keep alive. I mean, if we increase the number and put in a smaller caliper tree, is that a better option?
My opinion is that doesn't matter which the size is, but we have to have an agreement that after the hole is dug and the tree is put in it, that it's going to be watered when necessary and taken care of for a period of time until it gets fully established. It's the follow-up that is a failure in most cases, not the fact that some nursery stock was planted there, because in most cases, the nursery stock starts out good, but it hasn't been maintained. So I want to make sure that whatever agreement you have contains some maintenance and care for it for a period of time.
Okay, I'll add that to the plan.
It was sort of just, my recollection was through sort of discussion of the commissioners, and you guys can speak up, that the caliber should be bigger. Someone might have thrown out 4 to 6, but I didn't think it was a set in stone caliper. But I think my recollection, like when the planning board, when they require trees to be planted on individual lots, it's usually like 2.5 to 3 caliper size.
Yeah, that's typical.
Right, so that's kind of what I was going to, and I agree that it's the maintenance that's the most important, the watering and the taking care of. And then it depends on the species. Some trees grow faster than others. I can remember what species you had.
Yeah, I mean, we just listed off some native species, red maple, silver maple, white oak, red oak. You know, and they can pick a selection of those.
Yeah, I don't recall what size trees we discussed, but,
Well, the minutes say 4 to 6.
okay, well, that's, that'll do it. All right then, 4 to 6.
I'm not sure if that was, I think that was just sort of thrown out there.
Okay.
But I've seen many of the new trees planted in subdivisions, and they're small, but they're a good size that if they're taken care of, they grow.
Okay,
It's up to what you guys think is most
I'm okay with
appropriate.
that, but.
Okay, I have two questions. One is, why is replanting this area that is jurisdictional for us contingent on the neighbors agreeing to replanting on their areas?
Well, it's their land. I mean, you guys could, I mean, you issued your enforcement action against the person who cut the trees down, but ultimately, it's not his land. You know, so we need their consent.
So what if they don't give
And
consent?
you would pursue enforcement against them as owners, and then you would force them to have to deal with it. We don't anticipate that being a problem.
Right, so the enforcement order was issued that the trees were cut on the lot, and then it was also cut on someone else's
Right.
property. And that they would have to work with those property owners
Okay.
to allow them to go on their land and plant.
So that's what I'm getting at. It's sort of like, okay, so,
But they've consented for that.
well, not
We have
yet.
talked to them, we have talked to them,
right.
and they have indicated that they're okay with it, they just they want a little more time to look over the plan.
Okay.
Okay.
So it's not like they're not,
They're not saying no.
right,
They're definitely not saying no.
okay.
But there is an area that you can plant that doesn't require their permission, right?
Well, actually, I just got the abutters list 2 days ago, so we have a notice of intent under your bylaw ready to submit for Lot 4. So that'll be dealt with separately from this.
Oh, okay. so
This
we're-
is just for the off-site
Oh, this is for, okay.
restoration.
To plant trees and then for them to then
No,
cut them down.
no. Okay, and then the second thing is, when something gets completely cut like that, and we did see the pictures, I mean, it was down to bare ground, sometimes that's an invitation to invasive. So it seems like not only should you be planting trees, but also over the period of time that you're monitoring that the trees take, monitoring for invasive sneaking in. I mean, in no time at all, I think I said this the last meeting too, knotweed will be there and.
We can certainly look at that. And
Yeah,
I
I mean, it should be
actually,
part of the plan, because that's what's so unpleasant about something that's been taken down to the bare soil,
and
is that.
actually, the wetland in question is a very poor example of a wetland. It's a mess. And I suggested-
That has invasive species already in it.
Right, I suggested to Andrew, the developer, that, he could go into that wetland if it's okay with Landis and the commission and try to get rid of some of the invasives that are
What's
in there
in there?
already.
What's in there?
Bittersweet, I think, is and that's not that hard to deal with. It's a lot of,
It's a small area.
it's big, like it's big vines.
Ooh.
Like it's stuff you could cut with a chainsaw.
You gotta pull it by the roots, though. Yeah.
Well, if you cut it off and you treat the
Oh, you
cut
treat it,
stump.
yeah.
Can't pull that by the roots.
Okay.
like a tree trunk.
Yeah, right.
So if that's okay, that's something that he's willing to do, is to go in there and
Okay,
get some of those vines out of there and cut some of those and treat the
Yeah,
stumps.
because it would be a shame if it turned into a wilderness of bittersweet and knotweed.
You also have to be careful about what you're treating those stumps with the wetland,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, I'll consult with the botanist to do that.
other species that are.
Well, basically what they do is you paint the stump,
Yeah,
right, with like glyphosate or something like that. So it's a very
Yeah.
specific application.
It does leach to the roots.
Yeah. I mean, we want to get
Ian?
rid of it, so.
No questions?
No questions?
No questions?
All set.
Okay.
Okay, so,
It sounds like, so I've been in contact with a couple of well,
Holly?
the Wallers emailed and did say that they, hadn't agreed to it yet.
Yeah, Andy talked to them today, and they wanted more time to look at the plan.
So it sounds like if you could include some, if the property owner obviously agrees,
Yeah,
some removal of invasives actually in the wet. This is a very small isolated wetlands only under the bylaw, and it really isn't in very good shape, but if it was, it could use some cleaning out.
yeah, okay, fine. I'll give you a revised plan. So if we get there okay, are we good to proceed?
So are you guys happy with the 2.5 caliper? Or you want it bigger?
I'd like to see the agreement that shows that it's gonna, after they're planted, they're gonna be maintained,
I'll add that to the plan, Al, and I'll submit a revised plan to you,
okay?
and I'll just add that language to the plan.
Okay.
So maintained,
The new plants,
and monitor for invasives
monitor for invasives and,
sneaking in.
yeah. And then work with Landis on removal of invasives in the isolated wetland.
right, so usually with these enforcement issues, like on Palmer, we didn't say you're done, you're fine for, two growing seasons.
Right.
So the plantings have to,
Right.
be healthy for 2 growing seasons.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
fine.
So the size, you said, is, so what? What do we decide on, 2.5? Which size?
That's what's on the
2.5.
plan.
Okay. Okay,
Or larger.
Right, it's minimum.
okay.
Okay.
I guess I was thinking we might be passing the growing season if the neighbors are not agreeing for months and months. That's, then you can't plant them, and then you've got to wait for the next. good
Right, if we
time.
don't have a resolution within the next 2-3 weeks, then we'll talk to Landis, and, you know, if Landis needs to issue an enforcement order to the property owners, like, she could do that, if she needs to. But I don't expect that's gonna be necessary. Okay,
Okay.
Thanks,
Do
Dan.
we have to do something?
thanks for your time.
Thank you.
No,
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Um, so I think so you have the minutes, you have, I believe, 3 people here to discuss the Clark's Pond issue, that I put on the agenda, and I include kind of a brief summary on my report. Is it okay if they did their presentation
that-
before other items on the agenda?
I'd like to hear from them. Clark's Pond has been there for a long time, and I've never heard of it causing flooding before, so be happy to hear about it.
So just to, so you know as well, in my report, I just was bringing the commissioners up to speed on the issue, although I think I've mentioned this a couple of times, that there's been issues going on at Clark's Pond for at least over a year now, maybe a little bit longer, that an unauthorized person has been inserting or taking out boards, inserting boards, and that the DPW has been monitoring that, and the latest thing they did is they put up a sign that said, only authorized people can be removing the boards. Then, can you pronounce your name for me?
It's Hyundai.
Okay, Hyundai, who is here this evening from 57 Claps Street, has contacted me and has also contacted the town engineer. Carl Baldoff has gone out and opened up manhole covers and looked in catch basins to see if there's any structural issue for what's been going on, that they have noticed in the Clap Street area, water in the backyard and water in the basement, and that this has been, they've observed that there's a link between when the pond raises to a certain elevation, that it's believed that this is pushing the groundwater up in their neighborhood. So I said I would put it on the agenda tonight, and Ms. McCaw
Yes, correct.
said she would come and has a presentation which was sent to us, which I think we'll be able to.
Yeah, I didn't prepare a formal presentation. I just put a few slides
Yeah.
together to aid the conversation because I wanted to show you what kind of flooding we're dealing with in our house. And I initially thought it was a personal problem just to our property, but it seems like it's not specific to my lot. I've visited my neighbors' homes. They're having similar issues as well. And I came here with 2 of my neighbors from Lake Avenue. They have concerns about the same issue as well. So we purchased the house in summer of 2016, and we had a good 2.5 years of no flooding issues whatsoever. It was fall of 2018, we got flooded. I mean, it's, a foot of water in our basement kind of flooding, despite us having 2 sump pumps in the basement. So we drained it all out, and I started looking into it. The irony about it all is I'm a water resources engineer myself. I work for the Army Corps of Engineers. So we actually called the town first, wanted to see if it was a main water pipe break or anything like that. There was no fluoride in it, in the water, so we scratched that. Like Landis said, we called Carl. They checked the storm waters, no blockages, nothing. And then I started walking around the neighborhood to see if, you know, the neighboring street, Massachusetts Avenue, if they were having any issues. They weren't. So I walked over to Clark's Pond and realized, you know, there are stop logs at the two outfalls, and they had new boards added on top. By looking by the coloring of the boards, you can very clearly see which ones were new and which ones weren't. So I immediately called the town again and said, what are you guys doing? Like, why do you have these additional boards up? And I believe at the time Memorial Pond was being dredged. So there was a board added, and unfortunately for our case, a storm came through at the same time as well. So the pond level got elevated way higher than it usually is. With our request to the town was kind enough to remove those boards. But I believe certain people, some people, enjoyed having the pond level higher, so they started putting a board in. We would call the town again, request them to be removed, and they would. And we finally talked to Carl. I said, Carl, I know what I'm doing. Would you be okay with me removing it if this happens again? And he gave me the permission. And for over 2 years, myself and my neighbor Rob over here, we patrolled the pond, and whenever they added a new board, we removed it. This person's ways kept getting more and more creative. They started screwing the top board to the next one down, initially with just regular screws, and finally with tools that I personally could not remove. Right before we made a call to the town about, hey, we need help, this is getting to be too much for us to handle. Can we do something else? Can we put a sign up? They screwed the boards down in a way that was impossible for myself and Rob to remove. So Rob had to go out there with a chainsaw, I believe, right? And he had to cut the middle section of the top board that this gentleman installed. So, you know, it's, ever since we put the signs up, he stopped. He either stopped because of the signs, or he stopped because, you know, even if he added a new board on top, now there's gonna be a gap in the middle. So he won't be able to cover it up completely. It was a very difficult 2-year process for us, but it taught us something. Whenever the pond level reaches where the concrete level is of those outfall structures, with a couple drops of rain, we get flooding in our basement. And our sump pumps run constantly until the pond level goes down again to a level where we can handle it. And it's not just myself, our neighbors as well. Here's my graphics, if you want to see.
Gotta see this wood thing.
Yes.
Me too.
The very first board, December 2020, I believe that's the board that town added, actually, yeah, it probably stayed there for a while, and then that got removed. If we can go to the next slide. On December 15, whomever did it, they added new board again. And I don't have all of the pictures of these events, but I just found the ones that I had on my phone. If we can go back to the next slide. August of 2020, I took the left picture from the parking lot, looking at the outfall closer to the knife sharpening place. So there's the board there. And then they also added another board close to the parking lot, August 6th. If you can go to the next slide. July 11, 2021, another new board was added. Next slide. October 20, this is when he started getting creative. So, you know, this is the board, the outfall closer to the, farther away from the parking lot. And if you can look at the right picture, there's a little round area. He screwed it in and then covered it back up with a piece of wood, so you cannot like unscrew it to pull the board out. And if you can go to the next slide, and this is the final look of the outfall farther away from the parking lot. We had to cut the middle section to bring it to the state. Like I said, whenever the water reaches that concrete level on the sides, which holds the stop logs in place, with a couple drops of rain, we're getting flooded. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is a picture I took with this last flooding event, last rainfall event. The water level was right at that concrete level, and I'll show you a couple more slides to see what kind of problems we have over at Clapp Street when the water level is at that elevation.
Quick question, is that last one, there was no board there?
There was no board, but it just, with
Yep,
the
nope, that's-
flood,
yep.
you know,
Totally understand, just
hydrology.
clarifying my
Very interesting hydrology.
visual.
I took this picture from my bedroom, from 57 Clapp Street, and I would like for you to focus on not the greenhouse, but just past it, there's a water puddle there. My neighbors are, I think groundwater is turning into surface water in their backyard whenever the lake level reaches that elevation. And this is not the first time I saw that. With the process of lake level going up and down with these board being added, they deal with that. If we go on to the next slide, you're gonna see the garage of the same neighbors. They have to pump water out of their garage when the water level is at that elevation. Next slide, please. This is, this house is on the corner of Clapp and Stone. Their sump pump is constantly running. And when it's cold, all that water, the sidewalk, everywhere is a thin sheet of ice. It's definitely a slip and fall hazard for everyone in the neighborhood. I personally slipped myself a few times. I walk my son to the bus stop every morning. So that's an issue. Next slide is my basement. I have two sump pumps, one deeper than the other. And that bulkhead door you see in the back is actually on the Clark's Pond side of the house, meaning the water is coming from the pond side into my house. When we had the top board that this perpetrator was adding and we had storm events, I had water falling just under that door, like above the threshold. The water level gets that high. Next slide, please, if I have anything. That's my son. Similarly, I've already mentioned all of the issues, but you know, we're experiencing a lot of basement flooding, damage to personal property. I mean, I had to figure out the dry areas of my basement to store my stuff over the years. Some pumps are running constantly, and to drain the excess water, which is wasting a lot of energy. You know, we try to look for alternative ways to save energy, but then we do something like this that's causing heaven knows how much, you know, energy loss. And then I also mentioned the slip and fall risk. If we can go on to the next slide. And if you're curious, I mean, I have a theory as to why this is happening, you know, because Landis had a comment about, you know, Clapp Street is so far away from the pond. How are you guys having the flooding?
Yeah, I was wondering, so you said Lake Avenue as well, right?
Yeah, Lake Avenue is
'Cause that's
right
close.
there, though. But I'll show, I mean,
It's a low area. I also had the comment, I've been here for 20 years, and you were the first person who's ever brought this situation up. So I was wondering how, and you've owned the house since,
2016.
okay, so it's not, hasn't been that long. So I was just,
That's a
it's,
major rain events.
I'm not saying it wasn't happening, let me clarify. I'm saying it hadn't been brought to either Conservation Commission or the town engineer's attention. That's what I'm saying, so.
Completely
Just be
understand. Part of it, I mean, people don't know how to handle these things. They think it's nature's doing. They don't know who to reach out to. Because I'm in this line of business, I knew exactly what to do. I knew exactly who to call. And I think that has something to do with it. And way back in the day, I heard through some neighbors who lived there, people actually wanted to have water, so they kind of enjoyed having a river running through their basements. You know, hundreds years ago, maybe, I don't know. That's my guess. But if you could go on to the next slide, this is a topographic map of the area. I should have kept the pond as well, but maybe I can point to you here. So yeah, that is Clark's Pond, and 57 Clap Street is my house. So our homes in this area in Clap Street, on Clap Street, are definitely lower in elevation than the pond itself. I have the color coding of, you know, different elevations, different contours. So the browner it gets, the higher in elevation. This shade of brown is 175 feet NAVD. And when you get to our home area, the green area, you're looking at 170 feet NAVD. We're essentially 5 feet lower than the lake itself.
The surface of the pond, the mean annual surface?
Yeah. It's hard to know exactly where, to be honest,
Keeps
but I tried
changing.
to answer your question in the next couple of slides, so if we can move down. So I drew a profile from the lake to my house. That's the yellow line. And then if you can go on to the next one. Yep, that's the profile. So this is, I'm thinking, the bank of Clark's Pond over here. And I checked this in GIS, I promise. And this is where my house is. So any additional water that's stored on top of Clark's Pond, even if it's 1 foot, it just raises the groundwater elevation at our street, unfortunately, and that causes basement flooding. So it's kind of like having a U-shaped tube with soil in the middle, and you're adding water from one end. You would watch the water rise on the other side as well. That's essentially what we're experiencing. So those are my quick slides for you. I don't know.
Where's
I mean-
Lake Avenue on this? I'm sorry to keep harping on Lake Avenue, but two people are here from Lake Avenue?
Yeah.
So where's that on that, so,
I
in the middle.
didn't plot it, but it's probably around here on this side.
oh, it's that little indentation?
Yeah, probably there. And depending on how I drew it, it may not be very well drawn. I didn't focus on Lake Avenue on this one.
What number is Lake Avenue?
85 and 87. Initially, it was, I owned, well, the property was one big lot and was sold in 58. That's when Rob's was built. My house has been there since between 1895 to 1900.
Yeah, so I've lived there since 1990.
Can you just come
Oh,
up to
sorry.
the microphone and state who you are, and just, because they're.
My name's Rob Amaral. I live at 87 Lake Avenue. And I've lived at 87 Lake Avenue since 1990. And I'm from Walpole, and I've been living around here for a long time, since 1953. So I'm really familiar with the pond. I went swimming there as a kid and all this stuff. I never went over and measured the dams, you know. And I think, I don't know, it was about 12, 13 years ago, I forget, there was a metal, piece of metal on the parking lot and that failed and the pond drained. Phew, just drained, went right down to the mud, you know. And then, boards reappeared. And of course, I didn't get involved in this. I didn't think much about it. But there's no code or codification of the height of that pond. There's no what is the level supposed to be? Some guys from the town apparently put some boards in. That's how you
change the water table. That's not a good idea, because when you have a perched body of water like that, the water table will kind of peel down away from it in the soil. Now, the soil is all varied and everything around there. You know, it's gravel, there's clay and all this stuff, and there's sewer lines and surface drains and all kinds of interruptions. But in general, if you have a body of water, think of it as a bowl, it is going to peel down away. It's hitting her house. I never thought of it that way for Clapp Street, which I'm pretty familiar with Clapp Street, having relatives and friends there. But when she started telling me about this, I was like, man, that's exactly what's going on. The water table is peeling off, and she's getting hit with it over there. I have what do you call it? I've invested thousands in a basement dewatering system. My basement is dry. I don't have any problems, right? But I do have a problem. The pump is running constantly. The other problem I have is the town is not managing the level of the pond properly. They don't know what the level should be. It's just, people are coming up, guys who are putting boards in. That's no way to operate this thing. And then I've been thinking lately about this. I was thinking, there was a time when there was no pond there. That was a brook. It was called Spice Brook. It turned into something called Spring Brook now. So the pond was man-made sometime, I'm thinking around the 1830s or 1840s, for some commercial operation over there by the,
You're very knowledgeable, I was gonna say,
With
you're
the
a
condos.
very knowledgeable person
Yeah,
on
yeah,
the television that
with
knows
the
a lot
condos.
about
late
large ponds, just
1880s, but
So you
whatever.
understand,
well, if you look at the maps, the pond doesn't appear in some
I wrote a book
maps.
about it.
It doesn't matter. The pond was created for a commercial operation. Okay, it was the town selectmen gave somebody permission to dam that pond, to create that pond from a brook. Doesn't matter the age. So the town gave somebody permission to build a business, and there were various businesses. You know more about it than me, Betsy. I think there was a forge or whatever it was. It doesn't matter. There was water power used, and it was good. I think it was a good thing. Those businesses are gone. There's no more water power being used there. In fact, there's a lot of wasted water power going on right now, like massive amounts of horsepower are just going down there. Nobody's taking advantage of it. It's a shame. But at any rate, besides that, we got this pond, then the conservation, as far as I understand, the town bought the land from, I think his name was Charles George or something. I remember that as a kid, and I think it was a good thing, And then we have buildings being built around the pond all these years, including in the 1800s to 1950s, until not too long ago. And one of the jobs of the town, when those buildings go in, is the building inspector has to examine the excavation before the foundation goes in, and apparently the building inspector blessed all these home sites. The town of Walpole building inspector blessed all these foundation erections in the proximity of that pond. So it's like, the town needs to recognize that this pond is starting to, and I bet you there are other people in other parts of the town where there are man-made ponds are running into this problem, where there's uncontrolled elevation of the water causing water problems in their basements that really isn't necessary. I'm not saying get rid of the pond. The benefit for me living there for 30 years is I have a real good horse sense where that can be and still be a pond, still be skating, fishing and everything that we like, but not flooding basements. I'm intimately aware of the shore of that pond right near my house. It's amazing.
So let's ask Hande what her solution is, because she's an engineer who's,
Yeah.
what solution are you seeking?
I'm wanting to lower the normal pond level a little bit, because that's going to give us some additional reservoir volume when a storm event hits I mean, even when the the pond elevation increases, if we can contain it in a level where it doesn't flood the basements, I think we would be gold. We could do it on a continuous basis, which would be so much easier, I'm assuming, for the town's operations, because there wouldn't be any maintenance. But if there are other reasons to keep the pond level higher for certain seasons, we could do it during the wet season, for instance. Like in the winter, remove a board, lower the pond elevation so people don't have to deal with flooding. And in the summer, for example, put the board back in and elevate the pond level if need be. But, you know, if you guys don't, I don't know if you guys have the manpower or the capacity to be putting boards in and out throughout the year, or if if that's something you could entertain. My personal preference would be lowering the pond level, throughout the year, but that's just me, because
Yeah,
I'm
and-
biased.
If I just interject there, that during this process over the last year where I got involved, we came up with a ballpark number of where the good number is. We actually did, and one of the guys from the town spray painted it on the little concrete dam over by the parking lot. But now I'm thinking, because of recently, it's like, yeah, that actually is too high. And so I think there is actually a sweet spot where the pond will still be there, and it could be permanently at a new lower level and not cause anybody problems. Because, now we're looking at it, because nobody was looking at it. They were just putting boards in. And that was a common thing.
That's not true. I
Okay.
can keep on saying that, but I'm sorry, that's not true. It's
Well-
not that it's just been willy-nilly people going, doing, and not really paying attention to
Well,
what they're
what is
doing.
the elevation
So
of
I'm
that
just gonna
pond?
correct that,
But
okay?
what is
Thank you.
what is the elevation of that pond?
Chairman, do you want to see if the other commissioners
Okay,
have
what
any
I'd
comments?
I'd like to see.
What is the elevation of that pond?
What I would like to see is that the two of you come up with a proposal to us at the next meeting, and we'll see if we can come up with something, because we're not going to go and have the Public Works go in there every other day, every time it rains, and do something. If we lower it too low in the summertime, it's gonna be dried up and just be a bunch of lily pads. And that's not what is desirable for anybody. So, that pond was used for cutting ice for sailing ships. So, it's been there for a long time, as you say, but why it's there, I'm not sure. I wasn't here when they built it, and I did know of the ice cutting. We had 2 places in town that supplied cut ice for the sailing ships. So it isn't a new thing to have a lot of water there. I'd like to know what you propose as the correct elevation, and the fact that somebody, maybe even from the pond committee, has been putting boards in, trying to keep the pond up for skating if we ever got a cold spell.
But
But I don't know that.
There's other interests in town that pay attention to that pond. People who fish. We spend a fair amount of money treating the pond for invasive aquatic vegetation. So that's also interest. So I think the purpose of me putting you on the agenda, having you come, is so we could all work together to put together a plan that works. Probably will never work for everybody completely, but that, we can work with different different people who have interests. We did that at Turner's Pond. We had very similar problems at Turner's Pond. And we were, depending on who was on the phone, poor DPW was pulling them, putting them in, pulling them, pulling them. You know, people wanted it up for skating. People didn't, wanted it down for, because of septic systems. People wanted it down because they used to draw it down to, in the winter, to dye some of the aquatic vegetation, because that was a practice. But then the skaters didn't like it. So again, it was like back and forth, up and down. Lots of people said, do this, do that, do this, that, this. And so the commission did talk about it, and we tried to put together a plan, which I think is what we need. A plan so that we have a consistent program for keeping the pond at a level that hopefully works for different competing interests. It's a little more difficult this year because I don't know if there is a wet and dry season anymore. It changes. I mean, there is base, but I was and I'm probably talking way too much than I should, but I was walking up at Gilbert State Forest just a couple of weekends ago, and it was like March. All the streams were flowing, all the backwater wetlands were full. That was not atypical. And the same thing here in Walpole. The way the water levels are right now, the end of January, is not atypical. So that's my suggestion. We start with a plan, and then obviously it may have to be adopted as things get thrown and climate changes.
The other thing I should also mention is, you know, yes, these are historical structures or historical natural resources that have been in place for many, many years, but the conditions change. The intensity of the rainfall we get changes. The amount of water we have to deal with changes. That's why it's a good idea to have a plan and, you know, address that uncertainty into the future as well with it. So, you know, as the conditions change, we can change the condition within the lake as well.
But as Al was saying, if you put together, you know, maybe how you see it should be, and then, you know, the town engineer has been very involved too, and I told him you guys were coming, and I'll take your proposal, and the commission will review what the town engineer has to say, and DPW, who may have to do some of the work, and we'll try and come up with something that works better than it's been working lately.
So you would like our proposal to be just from our side? Am I understanding that correctly? Because I have no idea what the fishermen's or
Oh,
the
yeah, no,
skaters'
right.
point of
It's-
view
it's
is on
all-
the matter.
The two of you get together
Okay.
and come up with a plan.
Yeah.
And I would like to have a copy of that picture showing the groundwater in the area, because when I was talking to Landis this morning on the phone, that was my first question. What is the groundwater level of the pond when it's at its normal? And what is the groundwater level in your neighborhood? And does anybody have that information? Well, until tonight, I didn't know anything about that,
We
so I'd
could-
like to have a copy of that.
I mean, you already have a copy of the presentation. I think your members of the board can share them with you. But as far as understanding actually what the groundwater levels are, would you rather spend the investment on installing monitoring wells and, you know, waiting for it, or just gradually maybe like lower the pond elevation in small increments maybe
Right.
and observe it? Because it's minuscule cost. So, again, we could come up with that proposal in the next meeting.
Just one more thing I want to say. The cure is super cheap, super cheap. It's just a few pieces of wood. No ground water monitoring wells needed. You could do them, but you better put in a bunch of them. And that's way too much money to fix a problem this simple. This is easy. This is pretty simple.
Okay, we'll look forward to seeing your work.
Awesome.
And I'll be in touch with you, Landis, to
Thank you.
know about the dates of the next
Thanks
meeting.
for coming, and thanks for your input.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for
Always
listening.
nice to hear issues before they become joke.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's go down the list, Landis.
Go ahead. So, do we have minutes?
Yeah.
To approve?
We do.
Do the minutes?
Anybody move them?
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
No comments.
Is that the
Two sets.
January 11th?
Two sets of minutes.
I think we, do you have to vote it individually? or-
Yep.
Okay, that's the 11th, then yes.
Okay, let's do the 25th.
Okay, I will move those.
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. So the conservation, the North Street parcel, the capital budget item, we're, again, we would have jumped on that project a lot early, but because of a bunch of different circumstances, meeting sick and et cetera, we didn't. But I am meeting the assistant town engineer and the parks, the parks person up there, and Drew Hand up there to walk along the area between Adams Farm and the parcel to see if they can jump on doing something there to make a path easier for people to come down. On Monday, I'm going to meet with engineering to try and get the plan together, because we have to do a filing for the major work, so we have to get that done. So hopefully, we'll be able to get in on March so that we can get that moving along, because I think the hope was that the DPW could do the work over the winter, but they just can't. We can't do the work on the parcel without a filing. So we're a little behind on that, but trying to get it moving. No additional Willet Pond gifts, nothing additional on Pinnacle Trail. Master plan.
No update.
Enforcement orders, so again, I just keep on getting inquiries for 1900 Main Street, and so that's why we haven't done anything more on that enforcement order. On Burns Ave, we did get a report in January, erosion control report in January, and the site does seem to be stable at the moment with the growth. And there is the new 40, the single-family layout that was amended under the superseding orders has been sent back to the ZBA, so hopefully they'll do something with that and the project will get up and running. Under appeals, so the only thing under appeals, we haven't heard anything from the dispute resolution on Pinnacle Historic Complex yet. On the notice of intent for Warwick Extension, I think I mentioned this before, the application that was sent, and then I sent it back because it was incomplete. A letter was sent to DEP asking for a superseding order of conditions because the commission didn't hold a public hearing within 21 days. DEP agreed that 21 days doesn't kick in until you receive a full application. And now that's being appealed to appeals and dispute resolution.
Just for not looking at it?
He didn't,
So,
the uncompleted one.
so his side is, Wall Street Development side is, they sent in an application and it was complete. And we should have taken it in, held a public hearing within 21 days. But as far as, when I thoroughly reviewed the project, it wasn't complete. And DEP agreed that it wasn't complete, so, but if you disagree with DEP, then you go to appeals and adjudicatory hearings, so that's what's happening. So, I don't know what they'll say, but
Okay.
it seems to
Interesting way to
me,
spend
we're
money.
still waiting from a decision from, 6 months ago, so it could be a while.
Doesn't move that fast.
Oh, and I just wanted to bring the commission up to speed, so we have 2 filings for next meeting, one the Norfolk County ANRAD, and I'm just bringing this up because the last time they had an ANRAD, the commission voted to peer review it, and Beta was out there and peer reviewed. So I just sent it to Beta so they could get a proposal to us. So if the commission does decide to peer review, we'll be ready to go. Again, of course, it's your decision if you want it peer reviewed or not, but we'll be ready to go if you decide. And then with Remnar, they have requested an amended order of conditions, which is on the agenda. So first, the commission has to decide if it's an amendment or if they need a new notice of intent. So that you'll take up at next meeting. Either way, the town engineer and I would like a peer review. Again, the first project, the original project was peer reviewed for stormwater. So we would like to go that route again.
Which project is this?
This is Remnar,
Which one's
Bristol
that?
Brothers. It's a 100-unit AQV.
That's South Walpole?
No, it might be before your time. It's off of West Street. It's a giant gravel pit off of West Street, sort of not far from the Rolls Royce.
Behind where they left.
But they were, when were they last?
It's behind where they left the tiny cemetery. The plans, I did put them up on the website, so.
Okay, I'll check the age.
But they were last before us quite a while ago.
They were, the project started pre-COVID. They had a land disturbance also, they stripped the whole entire site, and then COVID hit, and that slowed their project down. And now they're slightly changing. It's still gonna be a 100-unit AQV, but there's just a slight change in configuration.
I remember that one, that was a while ago, they came
Yeah.
before us.
Yeah.
There was an age qualified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the original filing has expired by now.
was a
No, they've
quarry.
asked
No, it
for
was a quarry.
continuances, so
Yeah.
they got the tolling during COVID,
Oh,
and then they got a continuance.
oh,
So it
okay.
has not expired. No, with COVID, everything kind of
Yeah.
stopped.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
they did
Yeah.
get that, and then recently you guys issued an extension to, a year. So they have till June 2023.
It was like a quarry, it was like a
There
disturbance.
was a quarry, yeah. But every single tree is stripped off it.
They stripped it like right before COVID, and then
Right.
COVID hit.
Does anybody have anything to add?
I did a quick search about bittersweet. It looks like the town of Bolton might have some interesting information. Again, it was
Bolton.
super quick, so I'm gonna look more into it, but,
And how to control it?
yeah, yeah. Seems to be a multi-phase,
Yeah,
multi-treatments.
I have done research myself. Charles River Watershed Alliance also has quite a bit of information on their website.
Okay.
It's pretty in the fall, actually. the berries.
No, it isn't.
What did you say?
Pretty in the fall.
Betsy also hates
It is when my mom cuts it and makes a wreath.
Right.
Take it all out.
Yeah,
I
when
know
you,
Stephanie
when you
does
pull
in
it
her
up,
yard, yes.
if you leave part of the root, it's gonna make more plants.
Yeah, it's a fight or flight mechanism
Yeah.
in the plant,
Is it, yeah?
what it can to survive.
Pretty roots, a nice bright orange, but, you know,
Some people call it orange root
Yeah.
instead of bittersweet.
Orange root.
Yeah.
Orange root.
You know that it's bittersweet when it's orange or past.
And that's why I want them to tell you,
Right, it's not our
so
job to
they
figure it out.
know what they're proposing and what resources they need to do it, to get, if it's worth even doing such a small amount or not.
I mean, it is a lot. But I understand.
Yeah, but go walk down there, and it'll,
I want to.
I mean, right now, it's, yeah, it's bad.
it won't be long before you can't walk.
Can what they are proposing to do be piggybacked onto something else, like to do more, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're doing so much, maybe we
I
or
thought
someone,
of
you know
that.
what I mean?
Could we help them
Continue?
to do some, oh, it has to be Riverfront, I was gonna say. We have the North Street
I
property.
just thought that during that, like, you know, they're doing
Should
that.
probably be in,
Ton
Right.
of volunteers,
Executive
and so that's.
They
part
have
of
like
the reason.
13,000 volunteers or something
Who
to,
does?
Charles River Watershed, to
Yeah.
deal with this issue.
Yeah,
So if
they
a
do.
couple could
Every
assemble
day
An
thing,
invasive
every
plant
season.
mitigation group, like,
Yeah.
that would be something,
Ooh,
I know as
You.
part of a.
great idea.
I was
The
going-
IPG.
Yeah, the Norfolk Garden Club did a whole thing with invasive species and then trying to
Right.
bring in natives. So
Right.
it's just all community-based and,
Yeah.
and trying to get involvement and awareness. bridging the gap, between, that's pretty, I like it, but it's actually detrimental to
Sure.
the local ecology, so.
So maybe once they start
So
that
it-
portion, they can someone like that group can continue and do the rest or
Well,
something.
we'd have to form that group here in Walpole, but
Right.
maybe seeing an area without it would spur people to wanna.
I nominate Dean as the head of the IPG.
I was just about to nominate you!
See, I beat you to it. Nope, decline, thank you.
President of the IPG.
Yes, can we use flamethrowers?
Can I have I'll do
Does
it with a
napalm,
flamethrower.
does that do it, or?
Machete, can I have a machete?
Not allowed in the riverfront.
Ah,
Flamethrowers. Can you imagine?
Project
flamethrowers
Orange
and
isn't
machetes?
allowed.
Can we amend that?
I'll be a great leader.
So I think that's it, that's all I got.
Okay.
All right, I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Great meeting.